Alex, thank you so much for coming in and sitting down with us here today at the FCCA office. It's a pleasure, and we've been doing the FCCA Leadership Series for many years now, and now we're extending it out to platinum members, government officials. We've done CEOs and presidents from all of our member lines, and it's a pleasure having you here today. From St. Maarten, Alex Gumbs from the Port St. Maarten Group. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, Adam, it's a pleasure being here, invited to be on this series, and I look forward to our discussion. I'm sure we're going to have a fantastic time, and it's a pleasure being here at FCCA's headquarters.
All right, so let's get right into it. Origin story. What made you get into where you are today? What made you get into tourism? I know that you worked at Carnival before. What were your influences in getting into your career path that you're here today doing?
Adam, sometimes in life, your story kind of creates itself. And from a very young kid, I was always very interested in looking at tourists flourish through St. Maarten, through the island and town. And at the time, I was going to school in the city itself, and we would always see tourists with big smiles on their face and shopping bags, etc., roaming through the city. And for me, that was always captivating. And over time, through high school, I started doing research projects on cruise tourism in particular. And I ended up doing my internship at a port. I did my thesis at a port. And here I am, 15 years later, full circle as the CEO of the port. So It's quite an amazing story in that sense.
Yeah. What is your philosophy on leadership?
Adam, I firmly believe in sacrifices must be made to be successful. And over the course of time, we've all made sacrifices to achieve our goals and targets as professionals, but also in our personal life. And I think for me that stays centered at, the focus is not solely on the port, but what are we doing as a destination within the region, within the world, from a global standpoint. As, Port St. Maarten, we kind of compete on a global scale. It's a very small island. It's a very small port. But if you look at the importance in the region, it's, top tier.
So, when everyone is leading a company, as you're leading and you're working well with your destination, there's always a transformational moment, whether it's a certain project or an issue that came up. Do you have any that you can talk about right now?
Well, I think Hurricane Irma actually created a significant transformational mode for Port St. Maarten, from a leadership standpoint, but also from a experiential standpoint. And that showed us that we were truly resilient as a company. And from looking at what was happening from a regional standpoint, many ports was offline. I think St. Maarten was one of the few ports that came online as fast as possible. And, that for me, at the time, I was not the CEO of the port, but I was leading the commercial efforts. And that created a flip in my brain, in my wiring, from a professional standpoint. I would say that for me was definitely a transformational moment, because overnight, I was, tasked with speaking with the senior executives. I was tasked with connecting on a more strategic level with FCCA and looking at when we can return to business. So I think in chaos at times comes opportunities. I think for me in particular as a leader, that was the moment that triggered that next step. And, I also believe in tapering on the saying, opportunities can be given, but success is in your hands.
Well, that's a great story, and I love how you went from crisis to opportunity, and that was a big success for St. Maarten. It's where you are today. Speaking about today, so what about the future? What's the next step in the future for St. Maarten, for the Caribbean? What's the evolution possibly in the Caribbean? Any insights?
From St. Maarten's standpoint, I think much of the focus in the coming 3 to 5 years will be on the experience. If you look at the statistics, we're scoring fairly well on tours. We're also seeing the repeat rates increasing. So that, for us, is a highlight of looking further into the destination, having investments made in new experiences, new locations, new hotspots. From a industry perspective or regional perspective, looking at the Caribbean, I think there's a lot of opportunities. I think still the Caribbean is being sold as a winter month type of experience, where the Caribbean is a year-round experience. There's no other region that gives that flair, flavor, culture, mood, drive, shopping than the Caribbean. What we are doing as a group, as an association, with some of the other key destinations, I think that creates great opportunity for more destinations to come online, more destinations to look at the products, more destinations to actually ask themselves the hard questions. Where are passengers going? What do they want? Who is going with them? What is there for them to do in those locations? What we can do collectively in the Caribbean to create that appeal, to create that mystique, to create that beautiful sense of a cultural hotspot, but also individually segmenting the islands as their own, right? The Caribbean is not a pool of destinations that are all the same. I think the Caribbean also has to focus a bit more also on the infrastructure. So I think those two areas will have much of the focus of the Caribbean. In St. Maarten, that's also directly what we're working on. And I think the future is bright for the Caribbean.
You know, you see a lot of talk and conversation sometimes in the media about the cruise industry and the head taxes not being high enough or the fees not being high enough. But from our perspective, or my perspective, I think that's short-sighted. What are your thoughts?
So I think at times the item or the topic is looked at with blinders on, not looking at the wider impact of the industry. And if I put St. Maarten in perspective in that regard, and also many of the other Caribbean destinations, we're almost 100% reliant as tourism as a whole, right? So that's stayover, yachting, and cruise. If we look at statistics, so it's a fact, on average, passengers stay about 5 hours on island. Over that 5 hours, they spend, based on the last reports, on average $163 a person. If you look at that per hour spend, comparing to, for example, stayover, of course, a stayover passenger is not going to spend 24 hours in a day, but if you shelve that by 2 or even by 3, the average per hour spent from a cruise standpoint is higher. I think we need to start focusing on where the dollars is being spent and spread across the destination. And it also tails back to my previous note in terms of destinations looking at new experiences. If people have things to do that they like or they want to see or is branded in such a way, they're going to spend, they're going to pay. It's like if you're taking an Uber, you go on Comfort or X. X might be $22, Comfort might be $31. But you know, with Comfort, you're going to have a fairly better car. And from that standpoint, you want to feel a bit more relaxed. You're going to pay the extra $9 because that's what you want. It's going to get you to the same destination, but you're going to pay the extra $9. And that is where I think many destinations are leaving the dollars on the table because they're not as yet fully showing the full depth of the experiences or the unique opportunities in their destination. Like, I've been to other destinations and I was blown away, without calling their names, in terms of some of these experiences that is not even being sold.
Yeah, and I think delivering on the experiences helps with the economic impact for a destination. And then having the foresight to look at the industry as a holistic approach, where if you have cruise and hotel, we're actually great partners, right? We know that from the studies that we've done before, the BRIA studies, that 50 or 60% of passengers want to come back to the same region and destinations for hotel stays. So there's a great opportunity for everyone there. want to ask you one last question. I know you're busy. You got to go. What is your advice to the younger generation? Right now, if someone wants to get into tourism, what would you tell them?
That's a very interesting question, Adam. And I would say start early, get involved in their communities, participate in social programs in their communities, get an understanding of the impact of foreign dollars that's coming into their countries.
Yeah.
And, specifically from a tourism standpoint, try and get a job after school, see if it's for you. And I would say to the youth is get out there, show yourself, show up, be present.
Be present.
And look at yourself as a brand and start creating that brand as a person, and look at what you're doing on social media and be mindful that, that can be there for the next 20 years as well and can be held against you. So be present, be aware, be cognizant to your environment, and participate. That's what I can say.
I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
All good.
For coming on the FCCA Leadership Series. And we're going to keep these going for everyone that's listening. Alex, thank you for being here today at the FCCA headquarters. I appreciate your time.